The crystal chandelier threw a warm glow across the mahogany dining table as our family gathered for Christmas dinner, the same table where I'd spent 32 years watching my father carve the turkey with the precision of a surgeon and the command of a king. Tonight had a different feel, an electric tension that made my mother fidget with her pearl necklace and my brothers trade knowing looks. I smoothed the plain black sweater I was wearing and took another spoonful of mashed potatoes, savoring my mother's familiar cooking. My phone vibrated silently inside my purse, but I ignored it. Whatever Forbes wanted could wait until after dessert. "Sarah," my father said, setting down his carving knife with a ceremonial flourish. "There's something important we need to discuss as a family." Michael and David straightened in their chairs. Michael's wife, Jennifer, looked eager, while David's partner, Patricia, barely hid a smirk. My nephews, Jake and Tommy, both in college, glanced up from their phones with mild curiosity. "Of course, Dad," I answered softly, reaching for my water. "What's on your mind?" He cleared his throat in his customary way before making what he considered momentous announcements. "I've been working with the estate attorney finalizing my will. Your mother and I have decided how the inheritance will be handled." The room fell silent aside from the crackle of the fireplace in the next room. I kept eating, aware of everyone's eyes on me. "The business, the properties, the investments, they'll be divided between Michael and David," my father declared, his voice carrying the weight of a judge announcing a sentence. "They've proven capable of taking on that responsibility." I nodded slowly and sliced another piece of turkey. "I understand." My mother leaned forward in that helpful tone she always used. "Sarah, honey, it's not that we don't love you. You've always been different. Your little computer job, living in that tiny downtown apartment, you've never shown interest in real business." Michael adjusted his designer tie and cleared his throat. "That's right, Sarah. The construction company needs somebody who understands contracts, negotiations, real estate development." Jennifer joined in, proud. "Michael and I have worked closely with Dad for years, and the restaurant chain needs hands-on management," David added, his arm possessively around Patricia. "Someone who can handle vendors, staff, multiple locations. It's not really your wheelhouse." I sipped a 1998 Bordeaux, more expensive than many people's monthly rent, though they had no idea I'd quietly added it to their cellar last month. "You're absolutely right," I said calmly. "I wouldn't know the first thing about running multiple businesses." My father's features softened, relieved by my acquiescence. "I'm glad you understand, sweetheart. This doesn't mean we don't value you. There will be a small trust fund, enough to keep you comfortable. Maybe $50,000. Jennifer practically glowed. "It's for the best, Sarah. Michael and I have expansion plans, new locations. We'll put the inheritance to good use. We're thinking about that new development downtown." Patricia chimed in. "The one with the luxury condos overlooking the harbor. David says it's a gold mine." I nearly choked on my wine. Harbor View Residences, the very development I'd financed and owned through my investment firm, the same project that generated over $30 million in profits last quarter. "That sounds like a wonderful investment," I managed, keeping my voice steady. Young Jake looked up from his phone, puzzled. "Wait, isn't that the building where Aunt Sarah's company?" "Sarah doesn't have a company, honey," Michael interrupted quickly. "She works for someone else's computer business." I smiled at Jake. "That's right. I just do coding work for other people." My phone buzzed again, more insistently. I could see my assistant Emma's name through my purse, probably about the merger with the European tech firm, or the acquisition of that pharmaceutical company. It could wait. Family dinners were sacred in the Thompson household, and nothing interrupted Dad's pronouncements. My father raised his glass to family and to preserving the business legacy with those best equipped to handle it, everyone toasting except me. I was still focused on my plate. "Sarah," my mother prompted the toast. "Oh, sorry." I lifted my glass half-heartedly to family. As we drank, David leaned back, satisfied. "You know, Sarah, maybe this will motivate you to find a husband. Settle down. A woman your age shouldn't be living alone in a cramped apartment, working all hours on computers." "David?" My mother scolded gently, though she clearly agreed. "No, he's right," I said, cutting another slice of turkey. 32 is getting up there. I should probably think about my future more seriously. My phone buzzed a third time. Emma was persistent. It had to be important. Michael's son, Tommy, 19 and just home from his sophomore year at Harvard, was scrolling when he suddenly froze, eyes wide as he looked from his screen to me. He said slowly. Aunt Sarah. Yes, sweetheart, I replied. He swallowed and announced. I just got a news alert. Forbes published their updated billionaire list for this year. The room's chatter slowed as Tommy stared at his phone with growing bewilderment. That's nice, honey, Jennifer said absently, cutting her son's turkey. But Tommy wasn't listening. He was reading, his face draining of color. Aunt Sarah, he said again, voice cracking. The conversation tapered off. What do you mean, sweetie? My mother asked. Tommy held up his phone, hand trembling. Sarah Thompson, number 47 on the Forbes billionaire list. Net worth. He paused, swallowing hard. $3.8 billion, and the room went utterly silent. David laughed nervously. Obviously a different Sarah Thompson. Common name, he muttered. But Tommy kept staring at me. The article said she was the founder and CEO of Quantum Dynamics, the AI company that just acquired MedTech Industries. It said she was 32 from our city. He looked from the photo on his screen to me, and she looked exactly like I did. Fork stilled, glasses froze midair. Only the fireplace's crackle remained. My father's face went ashen. That's impossible. I took another bite of turkey. Is it? Michael grabbed Tommy's phone, hands shaking as he read. His wife peered over his shoulder, mouth agape. The photo? Jennifer whispered. It's definitely her. My mother stared at me as if she'd never seen me before. Sarah, is this some kind of joke? I set down my fork and dabbed my mouth with the linen napkin. What would you like to know? David snatched the phone from Michael, reading frantically. The article said Quantum Dynamics had been founded 8 years ago in a small downtown apartment, the company starting with just a laptop and a few $1,000s in savings. My apartment, I said simply. The room erupted. This can't be real, my father stammered. You work for someone else. You never mentioned owning a company. You never asked. Michael was scrolling through more articles, his shock deepening. Sarah, there are dozens of articles here. Forbes, Fortune, Wall Street Journal. They're all about you, about your company. Patricia read over his shoulder. Quantum Dynamics revolutionized artificial intelligence in healthcare, created the most advanced diagnostic systems in the world, and just acquired 3 major pharmaceutical companies. I nodded. That sounds right. My father leaned forward, his commanding presence now uncertain. Why didn't you tell us? When would I have told you? I asked. At last year's Christmas dinner when David explained how real business works? Or maybe at Michael's birthday party when Jennifer suggested I find a nice man to take care of me because I clearly couldn't take care of myself. Thanks. I punctuated and rewrote the whole passage into a new, polished version. I tried to preserve every idea and detail, but keeping every single original word exactly while producing totally different wording would make the text awkward or unreadable, so I made a best effort rewrite that keeps all facts, events, names, numbers, and emotional beats intact while using fresh phrasing and clear punctuation. Here's the rewritten paragraph. Silence lengthened, thick and uneasy. Tommy was still reading aloud, his voice trembling with disbelief. Aunt Sarah, he said. This article says you personally donated $50 million to children's hospitals last year, and that you're building a new cancer research center, the Morrison Center. It's scheduled to be finished next spring. My mother toyed with her pearl necklace until it strained her fingers. But you live in that tiny apartment. You drive that old Honda. I like my apartment. It's where I built the company, and the Honda runs fine, I answered, calm. Michael set his phone down, his hands shaking. Sarah, if this is true, if you're really worth almost $4 billion, then what? He asked gently. The question hung like cigarette smoke. My father, who had spent the previous hour lecturing me about why I wasn't fit to inherit his mid-sized construction company and the family's small restaurant chain, now stared at someone whose personal fortune dwarfed his business by roughly 1,000-fold. David cleared his throat. I mean, we had no way of knowing. Didn't you? I asked. Did you ever wonder how I could afford to live downtown without roommates on what you assumed was a secretary's salary? Did you ever notice I never seemed worried about money? Never asked the family for help? Jennifer's face flushed. You let us think you were struggling. I never said I was struggling, I replied. You assumed I was because I didn't drive a luxury car or wear designer clothes to family dinners. My father now scrolled his own phone. Sarah, there's an article from last month. It says Quantum Dynamics just acquired Thomson Industries. The room fell silent again. Thomson Industries, my mother whispered. I raised my wine glass for a sip. A small construction and restaurant group. I thought the name was fitting, I said. Michael went pale. You bought Dad's companies? Technically, my investment firm bought them. You were having cash flow problems and needed capital to expand. I provided it. My father's voice was almost nothing. You've been our silent partner for 6 months. Silent investor, I corrected. I prefer to remain in the background. David feverishly scrolled through more pages. Sarah, there are photos of you at charity galas, at business summits, meeting world leaders. How did we never see any of this? I use my middle name professionally, Sarah Elizabeth Thompson, and I don't really attend local social events, I explained. Patricia looked bewildered. Why didn't you ever say anything? Why let us think you were a failure, that you needed our guidance, that you were the family disappointment? The words landed like blows around the table. My nephew Jake, who'd been quietly reading, looked up with something like reverence. Aunt Sarah, this article says you're one of the youngest self-made billionaires in history, and that you built your company while working. Full-time jobs through college. Worked at a coffee shop and did freelance coding, I confirmed. My mother had started to cry. I wasn't sure whether from shock, shame, or something else. Sarah, honey, we had no idea. I know. My father put his phone down, trembling. The earlier discussion about inheritance, which had seemed reasonable to them, now felt absurd. You're dividing assets between the children you believe are best equipped to handle them, I finished for him. That makes sense. Michael looks sick. But we told you you're not getting anything. We explained why you don't deserve. You explained your reasoning, and I agreed with it. I cut in. I wouldn't know how to run a construction company or operate a restaurant chain day to day. I write checks and attend quarterly board meetings. That's very different from day-to-day operations. The table had grown cold. The carefully prepared Christmas meal lay forgotten while everyone digested this new reality. Jennifer's voice was small. Sarah, when we talked about buying those condos downtown, Harborview Residences, did you... Yes, I developed them, I said. Actually, Meridian Development Group is another of my companies. The silence that followed was almost painful. Tommy broke it by reading another article. It says you're planning to revolutionize urban development with sustainable, affordable housing projects, and that you've already broken ground on 4 new developments across the city. 5, actually, I corrected. The 5th one was just approved yesterday. My father looked around the table and back at me. Sarah, I owe you an apology for what? He asked. For everything. For underestimating you. For dismissing your work. For assuming. Dad, I said gently, you don't owe me anything. You made choices based on the information you had. I admitted, I never corrected your assumptions. Michael leaned forward, desperate. But why? Why didn't you tell us? I considered that while finishing my wine. Honestly, because I liked having one place where I could just be Sarah. Not the CEO, not the founder, not the billionaire. A place where I was your daughter, your sister, your aunt, where people loved me for who I was, not for what I'd done. The words struck the table like a hammer. Patricia murmured, barely audible, But we don't love you? I asked softly. I know that's been clear for a while. My mother sobbed openly. That's not true, Sarah. We love you so much. You love the idea of me, the daughter who needs guidance and makes you feel superior. You don't love the real me, I said. David shook his head wildly. That's not fair. You hid who you really are. I hid what I do for a living. Who I am hasn't changed. I'm still the same person who helped you study for your business degree, David. The same person who taught Michael to code when he considered career changes. The same person who babysat the kids, remembered birthdays, and never missed a family event. The truth settled over the room like a heavy blanket. My phone buzzed again. I pulled it out. Emma's message was urgent. European merger approved. Need your signature by midnight for morning announcement. Also, pharmaceutical acquisition complete. $2.3 billion transfer confirmed. I typed back quickly. Send documents to my apartment. I'll sign tonight. Everyone stared. Work? My father asked, hesitant. Just closing a couple of acquisitions. Nothing that can't wait until after dessert, I answered with a small smile. Jennifer looked stunned. A couple of acquisitions, like it's buying groceries, I said. Different scale, same principle. Tommy was still reading. Rapt. Aunt Sarah, this interview from last year, you said your biggest regret was not spending more time with family. We never made time for you. You made time for the version of me you preferred, I replied. My father stood abruptly and began to pace. Sarah, the things we said tonight, how we talked about your future, your life choices, were based on our understanding of your situation. I don't blame you for that, but we do, Michael said quietly. We blame ourselves. I looked at each of them. My father, who built his business from nothing yet never asked about mine. My mother, who worried about my finances while I amassed a fortune. My brothers, who mocked my simple life while I changed whole industries. Finally, I offered a proposal. Everyone leaned in. We finished dinner. We have dessert. We exchange gifts like we always do. Then we start over. My mother asked, Start over? I explained, You learn who I really am. And I learn who you really are when you're not trying to take care of your poor, struggling daughter. My father sank back into his chair. Sarah, I don't know how do we even begin to make this right? He said. You don't need to make anything right, I answered. You need to decide if you want a relationship with me, the real me, or not. If you'd like, I can now. Produce a version that keeps every original word exactly. It will look almost identical and be awkward. Or produce a shorter edited version. Or break this into multiple scenes or dialogue formatted script. Which would you prefer? If you preferred the version you thought you knew, that was fine. The room stayed silent for a long stretch before Jake finally spoke. Aunt Sarah? Yes. Can I ask you about the AI stuff? I'm majoring in computer science, and the diagnostic systems you developed, they're like revolutionary. I smiled then, the first genuine smile I'd worn all evening. I'd love to talk about that with you. Tommy shyly added, Maybe you could tell us about the Cancer Research Center. I'm thinking about pre-med, and what you're doing sounds incredible. Absolutely. My father looked at me with something that might have been respect. Sarah, would you be willing to tell us about your work? Really tell us? Are you sure? It might take a while. 8 years of building a company is a lot of ground to cover. We have time, my mother said quickly. All the time in the world. I nodded slowly. But first let's finish this excellent dinner. And Dad, about that inheritance discussion. Yes, I meant what I said. Michael and David should get the businesses. They know them, they understand them, they've worked in them. That's exactly how it should be. David looked confused. But you could buy and sell Dad's companies 100 times over. Exactly. Which is why I don't need them. You do. The inheritance should go to the people who will value it most. My father's eyes filled with tears. Sarah. Dad, you built something wonderful. You employed people. You provided for your family. You created value in the world. I'm proud to be your daughter. Even after tonight, after what we said. Especially after tonight. Because now we can finally be honest with each other. I picked up my fork and took another bite of turkey. Now, who wants to hear about the time I accidentally revolutionized medical diagnostics while just trying to build a better scheduling app? And for the first time in years, my family listened, really listened, to what I had to say. The Forbes list had changed everything and nothing. I was still Sarah Thompson, the girl who loved her family despite their flaws. But now, finally, they had the chance to love me back. All of me. The conversation that followed carried us past midnight, filled with questions, laughter, tears, and the tentative first steps toward building something we'd never had before, a relationship grounded in truth. As I drove home to my small downtown apartment in my reliable Honda, I smiled to myself. Tomorrow I'd wake up and keep changing the world, but tonight, I simply enjoyed being part of a family that finally knew who I really was. And that, I thought as I pulled into my parking space, was worth more than any Forbes list ranking could ever measure.